Alright, here we are. Friday, finished up week 6. Okay, just to remind, the concept of a hybrid course is the student does a fair amount of work prior to coming to class, and the way we run this class, web design, is you do a lot of research, and in that research you learn about key issues in the web, and then in class we review that research, and then we try to look at some type of lab work, or what I call assignments, that we work on in class, along with the general information. Using the web, future. Talked about Wikipedia, ads, purpose of a website. It's really important to try to discern what the website's trying to accomplish. I said if there's any questions on the course, there's some key things in submission people need to make sure. You can check back with the check back in the syllabus in terms of submission, and there's some key things in there you're supposed to be putting. Some people aren't quite doing that correctly, so they need to adjust. Make sure you review the work, look at what I say, reflect on it. It's very important in the learning process. We talked about top-down, bottom-up, and then the students had a fair amount of WordPress time to work on WordPress and to continue to develop their website. There's a lot of situations, and this is often called nowadays waterfall. It wasn't called that when I was in college, and we studied this process in college, structured design. Okay, well, there was a whole course just on this, talking about information systems, a whole course on that, how important it is to identify the problem, the challenge. What are we trying to fix here? What key things? And then we have to do analysis, and then what's really important, may or may not agree, but is this feedback loop. Okay? In the structure and design idea, it's very important to build on this feedback to make sure you've covered the purpose and what you want to accomplish. Analysis is very important to understand this. You really can't start designing until you have a good, at least that's the concept. And then during the design phase, again, there you try to work hard to determine if this design is going to satisfy the needs from the analysis. Okay? Is it going to satisfy these needs? Is it really solving the problem, this design? It's really crucial in the waterfall, top-down design method, to make sure you get it right at each step. Then you start to develop it. This is where you actually start creating the web page and putting your design into work. And we can see how this would be really important on complex situations where the goal is clear. It's clear what we want to accomplish. We're able to identify that. Okay? And then feedback, right? In the development phase. And then there's all kinds of ways to implement the process. And even here you're getting feedback. You put it in, you test, you do it. And in the web world, here's where we're talking about you're publishing a website. And in the real world, then what happens here in the waterfall situation, when something doesn't work and you have a problem, you run through the process again. Alright. Now, bottom up, it's similar. Let's just use red. So bottom up, you're still going to see you have a challenge. You start to analyze it, but you start the design phase ASAP, And a lot of times in bottom up, you create a prototype. Not always, but a lot of times you create a prototype. It's like you'll get some type of a web design up and going, okay, and then a lot of the iteration occurs right here. You're developing and iterating, developing and iterating. In a lot of environments, they talk about the agile process, software process or whatever, agile, in which you have the sprints. You know, they might be a week, they might be 2 weeks or whatever, and then you reevaluate at the end of the sprint and create your next sprint, and it really might vary. So it's a lot of iteration all the time. So let me give you this green thing again, a lot of iteration in order to develop it. It's used to develop web pages. Let me see here. It's used, I should say, web pages. It's used in programming. And what's really interesting is this whole idea can be also used as a way to manage a group of people. Now here, waterfall would be a real strong hierarchy. You know, you got the CEO, or you got the board, and then you got CEO, and you got vice presidents, and people under them, and people under them, and you got this hierarchy of management. Whereas here, in the agile form, you know, if I was to do that, the management are all, there's some people who manage a little bit, but it's pretty flat. A lot of the people all at the same level. Okay, well, that's enough on that page. Last thing then we'll talk about the WordPress will constantly remind you that you can get the paid version, and in the paid version they'll get you a domain name. You can just get a domain name without getting a website like dirkseneducation.com, and then you tie that domain name to an IP address, and then the DNS servers make the matchup. So somebody will type in the domain name, DNS will find the IP, and then the IP will actually locate the site via the internet. You can use AWS for websites. You can use Squarespace, Wix. Now AWS would give you lots of options. You can just get what they call compute time, where you actually just get a server and you put Apache on it and so forth, and then you just pay them to use this, and then you do everything, the HTML and so forth, and create your website. Or they have the way where they get you started on the web and they'll set up WordPress for you, and then you go from there developing your website. We'll demo those on the line. Last thing we talked about, we got interviews. They're going to come up right after midterm. So most of the people have their own personal websites, so you can talk with people who are managing their own. Pretty much self-taught. Pretty similar to what we're doing in here. You're kind of developing your own personal touch on how to develop websites, and then we'll interview a business. We'll just use people who manage website here at MAC. So this was a start in terms of talking about what things you might want to ask. So we'll develop some questions in class. You know, how much time does it take? What product to use? What's the purpose of your site? You know, what's the good and bad of how you manage your site and so forth. Well, that pretty much wraps up. Can you believe it? 6 weeks. We'll see you next Friday.